Welcome. My name is Alfonso Severos, and this is the Peripheral View. Peripheral View is my weekly series on issues that are on the edge of the news. I have began to start my videos with a poem. Last week was the first time, and today I'm going to read another poem that was from one of the poetry books I did called The Poem Grows in Brooklyn. And this poem is called Yuri Kachiyama. Now, some may know the name Yuri Kachiyama, but many probably do not. There's a famous picture of Malcolm shot, bleeding, and dying on the floor of the Audubon Ballroom, Malcolm X, that is. And there's a Japanese woman holding his head. That's Yuri Kachimani. She was a close friend of Malcolm X, and I wrote this poem about her when she died. If I could shook Yuri's hand, would I have felt a lifeline of 93 years, or would her grip gently transmitted the 50 plus years of struggle by sending pulsating sensations throughout my body down to my very DNA. If I could shook Laurie's hands, would I have felt the pain and tears she had to endure in the camps in Jerome, Arkansas, because of ignorance and fears of others? If I could shook Laurie's hand, would I have felt her solidarity she had with her neighbors in the projects in Harlem? If I can shook Yuri's hand, would I have felt the handshake and solidarity she had with so many others warriors for social justice? If I could shook Lori's hands, would I have felt the tenderness of her touch as she held the head of Malcolm X, shot, dying, with blood and life slowly exiting his body? If only I could have shook Yuri's hand. That's a poem from my second book, A Poem Grows in Brooklyn. If you're interested in any of my poetry, you can go to my website, alfonsoseveros.com, ALFONSOSIVERLS. I want to talk about three main topics that relates to politics and government today. One of the results of Donald Trump being in office is that it motivated a lot of people to get interested in the political system and politics. We were following it. People were intrigued. People were angry. People wanted to know what was going on. And we've seen both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and of course Barack Obama, do executive orders. What is this executive orders? Executive orders has its power and rooted in the Constitution, actually in Article 2 of the Constitution, that gives the presidents enormous power. That power is to produce an executive order that functions just like a law and do not need the approval of Congress. The first one to do executive orders was, of course, the first president, George Washington. He submitted 8. Thomas Jefferson did 4. Some of the famous executive orders was done by Abraham Lincoln. The Emancipation Proclamation. Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation freed no blacks because it was an executive order that freed blacks only in the Confederate States. And of course, the Confederacy was not following Lincoln at all. As a result, it freed no blacks. Even blacks in the border states of the Confederacy were not free. Another famous executive order was done in 1948 by President Harry Truman, desegregating the armed forces that had immediately had impact on the armed forces all around the world. That was done because we were in the heart of the Cold War. And Russia was pointing at racism in the United States and using that as a propaganda tool. So executive orders has been around. Donald Trump did about 206 executive orders in 4 years. Barack Obama did 268 executive orders in 8 years. Big difference. And we see Joe Biden, who did about 30 in 4 or 5 days. So that's executive orders. It gives the president enormous power to institute change. The other thing I want to talk about is this idea of filibuster versus reconciliation. Now, you may have heard about the Senate and the problems and concerns about filibuster versus reconciliation. What's a filibuster? A filibuster is not somebody getting up there and talking forever like in the old James Stewart movies. No. Filibuster is having the rules of Congress indicate that any major legislation will require 60 votes, thus forcing Congress to compromise, a filibuster. So in effect, it gives veto power to the minorities. Now the Republicans are trying to push the Democrats to institute, and keep in place filibusters so they can vote against the Democratic agenda. Filibuster is the complete opposite of a reconciliation. A reconciliation is that a law can pass by a simple majority, 51 votes. Republicans use reconciliations and filibusters to completely block the Obama agenda for 6 years. Now, we can be quite sure. Bernie Sanders said it. He said the Senate will pass the stimulus package. And if necessary, if no Republicans come aboard, we will do it through reconciliation. So they already have 51 votes. So unless a Democrat vote against the stimulus package, it will pass. As far as the Senate today adopting the filibuster, keeping it in place, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we have these concepts of government: executive orders, filibusters, and reconciliation. And people are more interested in how the government operates, and I think it's important to have some sense of what these concepts mean. I hope this was informative to you. Thanks for watching.